Square Enix has tried some interesting tactics to draw more players back into this amazing classic Final Fantasy XI, especially over the past few years. But recently, I've been questioning and wondering about, in my opinion, the strangest of all, the live Vana'diel YouTube feed. Let's talk about this for a second. So for those of you that don't know, and I'll leave a link to it in the description below, on the official Final Fantasy XI YouTube page, there is a constant live feed called Live Vana'diel that just loops and plays, and I'll put it on screen now, through various Final Fantasy XI scenes that I'm assuming are live on a server right now. I say I'm assuming because I'm not sure what server this is from. I see players' character outfits that clearly wouldn't be something that Square Enix would do themselves. Like, this looks like a live representation of Final Fantasy XI, but I don't know what server it is. Leave a comment below if you happen to know what this is. So, what's interesting is this is running all the time. This particular feed was started, it looks like in June of 2020. I believe it has been running for longer than that. That may be like when they last kicked it off. Let me know if that's the case. I don't know what happens to this feed during downtime windows when the servers are off. Does the feed go down? Can anybody tell me the answer to that? I have more questions than answers for you today. But I just have one big one that has made me make this video. Why Maura? I have never seen this feed go anywhere else. Not Juno, not any of the 3 starting cities, not even Selbina, which I would say is probably the more popular of the two in terms of mirrored zones of Maura and Selbina. Maura has become far more popular in the past few years thanks to Ambuscade specifically. But that's kind of it. If we're talking about hubs of characters in the game, I don't even know if Maura is like the biggest. Ambuscade is certainly a popular activity, and this is the only way to get into it, but why Maura? They clearly didn't even put a ton of effort into the live feed. This is a constant stream at 720p maximum quality. The quality of the game that we're looking at internally might also be 720p. Look, the resolution that they're rendering the game at, you can see all the aliasing going on. I think it's pretty terrible. Here's a great shot though where you can actually see live players. They're loading in like one at a time. Somebody just moved away. I think this is live. Every time I get to these parts of the feed where you can see sort of, you know, the Moogle section by the crystal for teleportation, and then a little window over to the Ambuscade book guy. These look like real players. I believe this to be an actual live feed of a server, which just keeps bringing me back to, this couldn't have been like super easy to set up. They probably had to do a little bit of work to get these floating in-game camera angles working, streaming a constant output to this YouTube channel. Which maybe that answers my own question. Maybe that's why only Maura, because it's actually kind of a pain in the ass to set up. At least, you know, for Final Fantasy XI. This shot, whenever we get here, I'm like, what? Who did this? It's zoomed in on a wall, which is, you know, the worst texture resolution ever, and then it slowly zooms out. And we see, you know, some players over by the Moogles. Was that Tartaro on top though? Was that a player? I don't think there's not like a Tartar up there in that particular equipment set, right? How did he get up there? That's pretty funny. But yeah, so here we go. We swing by the Moogles. I mean, these are players. Look, this guy's like clearly not even appropriately dressed. It is definitely the kind of outfit that a player, but not an official Square Enix representative, would put on their particular character outfit designs. Nice ass, dude. I just don't get it. I don't get why this probably took a little bit of work to get set up. I guess it sort of shows that there are players still in the game. If like somebody's like, is anybody still playing Final Fantasy 11? They Google search it, or they search on YouTube, and this is one of the first things that comes up, and they see the activity and players wandering around in like a live. They're like, look guys, we still have live Vana'diel. You can still go to the servers right now. It's still active. Sure, but if it was easy, why not do it for more zones? Are they afraid that they'll show emptiness? I think they could pick good spots, even if they only did like another 4 or 5 zones. Why not pick heavily active areas? Like even just the cities. Do Juno, do Adeline, do Ryzen Jima. I don't know. Why only Maura? Wait, this shot is great because we're gonna pan over and we sometimes can see somebody waiting for a boat, and I always laugh. I'm like, who's taking the boat? What are you doing? God, this NPC is right in the way. I think the music plays. I've got it muted right now, but I'm pretty sure you can hear the Maura music, which is great, but I just don't get it. It just seems like an idea that they had, and they're like, let's put this out there. And as with many things that have happened with Final Fantasy XI in recent years, they just could have taken it a little bit further. This is one of those things where if you're not really currently invested in the game, or you're traveling, or you're away from your setup, and all of a sudden you've got that nostalgic bug, if you go check out one of these like live feeds and you can see players in a game interacting, playing, doing stuff, it can really like jumpstart your drive to want to play again. But I say that as if like you see areas that are nostalgic with players doing activities like fighting enemies or something. Like, why not an actual feed of within the ambuscade fights? That'd be kind of cool. I would love to see combat, parties. I mean, obviously we're a few years too late, but if they had like Baoflao thickets and you could watch people camping, can you imagine if you could always see if like a camp was open? Like, that would have been amazing. Again, with the nature of Final Fantasy XI in 2021, I don't know if that itself works, but you can still get other cities, other areas. Even if you just want to do a couple roaming shots of like Gustaberg, Saruta Baruta, and just like flying by, and you know, once in a grand while, you'd see one little player wandering across. You're like, oh look, somebody's running through. And most of the time it would be empty, but I think that'd be fine because they're just beautiful zones and you'd see mobs wandering around. It's only Maura. So interestingly enough, in pulling this up, because I made a note of this a while back, I was like, I should totally do a video on the weird live Vana'diel Maura feed. I just don't, like, why is Maura the representation of Final Fantasy XI? That's so strange to me. But when I was putting down the list of like things to do, I went to find a video again today and saw that Eden, the private server Eden, had sort of mirrored this with their own version of like live on Eden. And it was a character feed. I think it was in like Bastock Mines, and it only ran for like 3 hours because I'm pretty sure that they had somebody. They were actually in first-person mode on a player, and they like captured that feed, which, you know, are the options that are available to most of us as players, even if you're running a private server. I don't know how Square Enix did this with these like panning cameras. It looks like, you know, there's something going on here. Obviously, they have access to create cutscenes, which I'm sure they leveraged here, but it is just funny. But this is one of those things where I'm like, Square Enix, in its current state, is this live feed helping Final Fantasy XI at all? I don't know. Let me know in the comments, especially if you were on the fence about whether or not you wanted to come back to Final Fantasy XI, and you stumbled across this live feed and you were like, that's it, that's the straw on the camel's back, I have to play now, I've missed it so much. Because I have had videos like this, ideas like this kind of grab me, because there's something about just capturing the natural, this is the world, a view into the world. Not a video like I would put out where I'm cultivating an experience and I'm sharing a narrative. None of that. Just a glimpse with the music, the ambient sounds, mobs, characters, people moving about their day-to-day, almost like a webcam on the side of a building watching just Vana'diel kind of pass by. There's something about that nature of it just being a living thing that you're getting a glimpse into that makes me want to go back and visit it so much. And I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but it's different from telling a story about something happening in Final Fantasy XI. This is just witnessing Vana'diel, and the idea is really cool. But every time I get hyped about it, I remind myself and I come back around to, it's only Maura. Why? I don't get it. Square Enix, if anybody that officially represents Square Enix in any fashion, at any point, happens to see this video, I'm truly curious. Was it one of those things that it would have just been too much work? Perhaps this was a test idea. It took a little more time than they thought it would. And when push came to shove, when they said, should we do that with more zones or be like looping through other zones? Somebody said, man, it was just too much work. It's not worth it. Might be the answer. We know that Square Enix and Final Fantasy XI, while getting more support, is still running on a minimal crew with minimal funds. They do have a 3-year plan now, which I think we're like 1.5 years into, with funding, but still, you know, you have a set number of resources. This isn't a Final Fantasy 14 or a World of Warcraft style project where you've got enough people to do almost whatever you want. You know, it's funny I compare those two because I do not think those project teams are anywhere near the same size. I think Final Fantasy 14 is dealing with a much smaller team than World of Warcraft is. I should find out someday. I should try to do research on that. Here comes the boat. Amazing. Is anybody waiting for the boat? Can we even see? The draw distance on actual players is so short. I don't think so right now. Too bad. Guys, you might have a chance to quick catch the boat if you hurry. Guys, let me know what you think about this this feed. I think it's a really cool idea, and I do think there's something special about it. Not to reiterate what I already said, about having a window into the living microcosm of Vana'diel. Just plain footage of the game happening that can draw players back in. I think their choice of like, this is all we're gonna show, is just kind of interesting. All we get is Maura. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of our stream from this Thursday where we sort of just sat in Juno for half the stream chatting about random stuff while I pretended to seek for a party I didn't really want while I was anonymous. That reminded me a lot of the old Final Fantasy XI days, but also it was just kind of a glimpse into like, my stream was a window as Vana'diel just sort of passed by and we just kind of chatted about stuff. Speaking of which, if you didn't know, we do stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I say every Tuesday and Thursday. This past 2 weeks have been insane with work, and I think I've gotten half of those streams out. But in general, that is true. Definitely come by and say hi. We sometimes play Final Fantasy XI, sometimes play other stuff, sometimes just hang out and chat. All sorts of stuff. I mean, that was what, an hour and a half? And I spent, I think, 45 minutes of that in Juno. This is constant, a constant Maura feed. Otherwise, guys, I would love to know your thoughts on this. Is it harmless? Is it just out there? Did it probably take somebody 2 seconds? And I can't even believe, am I talking about this longer than it took them to set up? Possibly. I just think it's an interesting choice. If you think I've already put too much thought process into this, and overall, hey, wait, last time we saw this guy, he was like moving the sign. First of all, which I've never seen him do in game, but that's really interesting that that was like random luck. I thought they like timed that intentionally. Anywho, let me know what you think. Is it just a goofy thing that exists? Do you wish they'd gone further? Do you not care at all? Want to know your thoughts? Otherwise, guys, see y'all in the next one. Peace.
Oh man, fucking stream nights are such shit. Even though all my energy was on like, I mean not the stream. Sorry, I should clarify. I just mean like the attempt to get started and go and launch into some shit. I was like, let's get to the planes and get going.
You were pumped. You were hyped.
Inevitably, we will always start an hour behind because